and the government doesn't know what to do. They're like, oh, things are falling. We've got like highest rate of knife crime in the Western world. We've got like skyrocketing mental disorders, steroid epidemic, like loads of stuff, like just crazy, out of control. And, like no family, no community, nothing. And so what does the government do? Like, oh, surveillance. We need to like put cameras everywhere to stop the crime. We need to like make loads of new laws. We need to like heavily restrict like what people do. We need to like breathe down people's neck. I'm not saying that's by itself incorrect response, but it's an incomplete response. And it's a lack of recognition of what is the issue, what is the core issue, which is the loss of any kind of moral, spiritual fiber or framework that used to exist in the West.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Os habla Lunaticoin y bienvenidos a mi podcast. The history of Bitcoin has been accumulating a few years now. In just few days, it will reach the milestone of 15.5 years. While in human terms this would be akin to a teenage mind still discovering the world, in Bitcoin's case, nation-state level stress test began when it was barely 1 year old and WikiLeaks considered adopting it. It was in those early days that Bitcoin faced its greatest danger. Not due to the fragility of its hash rate and mining distribution, but because of the potential loss of direction and regulatory capture that could have occurred due to a poor decision by the nascent community and the dev team. It was in this environment that today's guest first discovered Bitcoin. He was one of its first 5 developers and quickly realized that the state would do anything to tame the Hydra, and he decided to do the opposite. Equip users with saddles, reins, and spurs so that they, and not the state, could use the anti-Leviathan as they wished. In today's podcast, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Amir Taaki, an early Bitcoin developer, creator of the first wallet with CoinJoins and Stealth Addresses, the legendary dark wallet, and above all, a mind exceptionally clear on the essence of Bitcoin and its relationship with the state. Although Amir still uses it, he has distanced himself from Bitcoin for years now and no longer develops for it. He believes it has lost its way, that the dev team lacks charisma and direction, and that in some way Bitcoin has been captured. In today's conversation, drawing a parallel between the first major state push in 2013 and the anti-privacy push we are experiencing now in 2024, Amir will share the context for creating Dark Wallet in 2013, who Gavin Andresen really was, what was won in the Blocksize wars, central bank libertarians, why crypto has been captured by the system, the demoralization of the West, the birth of the lunarpunk cycle, Bitcoin's lack of direction, and the dark future he envisions. All in a podcast you can listen in original version here in English or dubbed in Spanish thanks to artificial intelligence. This special episode, recorded at MoneroCon in Prague, is made possible thanks to the support of HODL, CoinKite, Bitrefill, Minter, and La Dobla Bullion. All of them are Bitcoin companies I use, and we'll briefly talk about them during the podcast. If you enjoyed these live recorded escapes from the Bitcoin echo chamber, let me know with a boost on Fountain, Nostr, or Minter by sharing the pod with a comment or by sending me an email at hola@lunaticoin.com, where you can also suggest ideas for a future podcast. Now, get ready to delve into pure Bitcoin history while going dark with Amir Taaki. Amir, thank you for joining me here in Monero conference in Parallelnipolis. It's an interview that I've been looking for years now, and I think that it's coming in a very good moment with all these things that we are seeing, what is happening with Samurai Wallet, with Tornado Cash. So really looking forward to talk with you.
Thanks. Thank you, Luna. Same.
Amir, I know you very good. I've studied you very good. I listen a lot of things, a lot of your talks, but there might be somebody who doesn't know about you. Who is Amir Taaki?
I've been working on free software and open source for, 15 or 20 years. And I was also one of the first 5 Bitcoin developers, worked on it also with a focus on anonymity. We were also, I said, we were working on free software. We were squatting abandoned buildings and turning them into what we called hack labs, which were spaces for people to work on political technology. And that is like the precursor to hacker spaces that we know today. I also worked for, Catalan cooperatives. In terms of cryptocurrency, I made the first UK Bitcoin exchange, worked a lot on anonymity software and, Bitcoin implementations, lots of different things. Also, I was in the YPG where, I was on the front line against ISIS, and then I was in Syria for 3 years working on economics projects. Now I'm working on this project, DarkFi, which, we were kind of ideating or planning for like many years since 2019. We're coming up to release soonish. It has its roots in 2013 with the Dark Wallet project. Dark Wallet was a response to the kind of takeover of or hijacking of Bitcoin at the time. It was co-founded by Spanish hackers, by Cody Wilson, who invented the 3D printed gun, and also Vitalik, who created Ethereum, later went off to make Ethereum. And yeah, people can find the original video on YouTube, the Dark Wallet video. Yeah, at the time, the Bitcoin Foundation was trying to do this kind of takeover of Bitcoin. So we made that project to respond to that.
Now that I studied you, I realized of many things that maybe the audience doesn't know. But for example, you are the creator of the first BIP, the Bitcoin Improvement Proposal. And we talk a lot in Bitcoin about, the new BIP, this number or that number. The 01, it's from you. It's the guideline of how to do a Bitcoin Improvement Proposal. And as you were saying, you are one of the first 5 Bitcoin developers, but I know you, or I got to know you because of Dark Wallet. And I've been thinking about it because it's been 10 years, more or less 10, 11 years from that time. Like the release of Dark Wallet was in April, May 2014. So we are basically in the 10th anniversary of the alpha launch. And with some things that you were saying now, I realized that I'm kind of living a deja vu. And I want to push on this idea that you were mentioning now. In 2013, there was this group, the Bitcoin Foundation, an organization created to kind of bridge Bitcoin to regulators, to try to adapt Bitcoin to regulators and to explain to regulators that they shouldn't be afraid because Bitcoin is not that private. Bitcoin is not for criminals. Bitcoin will do what you want to do. And why were they doing that? Because they were focused in mass adoption, in pleasing regulators to achieve mass adoption for Bitcoin. That was one side of the story, the mainstream side. And then there was the other side, something that was happening also outside Bitcoin. We had the Snowden revelations in June 2013. We have the release of the idea of Dark Wallet in September 2013. And then, as I was saying, in May 2014, the launch of the alpha. Was that the reason why Dark Wallet?
In like 2010, Bitcoin, it was born out of this group of, idealist people, which had like this, they were going, the central banks, they steal money from the people. Bitcoin is a response to that. And it was, like a really kind of crazy schizo community that had belief in something and really was driving the software forwards. But then like a group of business guys started to come along and they started to see this technology had been created. And they said, they were kind of going like, if we could just wrestle this new plaything that these anarchists have created, if we can like just get it out of their hands, then, we could repackage it. It can become accepted by the mainstream and it could be useful for consumers. It could make credit cards cheaper, in payments smoother. And, Gavin Andresen being the simple guy that he was, they were like, oh, Gavin, we will make you the king of the developers. And he was like, oh, yes, I accept this role, because he is not like a charismatic guy. And he also saw that a lot of young guys were now coming in and threatening to usurp him. So he wanted to assert his power. He go like, I'm the chief scientist. And nobody ever gave him that title. He just anointed himself chief scientist. And all these people started to come in. And this was, I guess like 2013 kind of time when Bitcoin started to have real value. Like in the beginning, Bitcoin was worthless. And then it started to have a market value. And then, I would have people coming up to me and they go, Amir, you're an expert on writing software. I'm an expert on marketing. And let me tell you how it's done. And they'd tell me their brain dead ideas about how Bitcoin should be, non-threatening and friendly so that we can get regulators and mainstream adoption, etc. And so they kind of wanted to get rid of all the talk about, it's everybody today in Bitcoin is like, I'm a crypto anarchist, I'm into guns. But actually, back then, all of those people were, the main thing that everybody was going on about was, we need to get mainstream adoption. We need to get regulators and big banks on board. And then they would even try and, offer these apologetics where they kind of go like, oh, I'm libertarian as well. Like, I'm secretly libertarian. I do libertarian projects like at nighttime, but actually in the day I work for the bank. There's like this kind of attitude, and it's like, no, you just corrupt. You just corrupted, because that's how the corruption happens. People, like they go like, oh yeah, well, the CIA is doing these wars in the Middle East, 2 million people dead, but maybe, me being a part of that machine, but like maybe I can. It's like just a way of, yes, you're part of the corruption, but you're convincing yourself that you're like kind of, you're polluting the world, but you're planting a tree, to offset your pollution. But in the end, like, it's just like a monoculture of trees. So like a moral platitude, not really changing anything. So there's this kind of attitude with Bitcoin. And, we can argue how authentic or inauthentic these people are. And a lot of people, like when the Blocksize debate happened, that was posed as a technical thing. You got all these developers kind of going to community like, you don't understand this thing. This is a technical matter. Don't involve yourself with this. Like, this is a decision for developers, which is not true. It's not a technical matter. Like I can explain to anybody the trade-offs between increasing the block size and allowing it to remain small. Anybody can understand what that means for the, direction of the system. But it was presented in this way as a technical thing. But actually, the real matter was that they wanted to get rid of these business guys who were trying to do a coup on Bitcoin, trying to squat Bitcoin. They wanted to get rid of Gavin Andresen. It was like a coup d'etat on Bitcoin. And it was something that was initiated by Dark Wallet. And the thing is, we weren't there we kind of started the kind of movement, which then gained momentum, but we weren't there to kind of capture that. And then it was like carried on by this other group of uncharismatic, like engineer dev people. They kicked out the business people, but they didn't really have a vision for what Bitcoin should become. So Bitcoin kind of became this like rudderless, directionless project where people were like, we're just doing engineering. We're just maintaining the software, which is, not how things grow. It's how things like maintain. That lack of having a vision of what Bitcoin can become has allowed Bitcoin to become infiltrated, has allowed, kind of corruption to set in. So yeah, you're correct when you say that there's parallels between back then when there was already attempts infiltrating Bitcoin, which didn't succeed, versus attempts now that have succeeded. And
like what?
just the entire industry is pretty much captured. Like, I'm not even talking about Bitcoin itself. Just cryptocurrency as a whole is dominated by influencers, by VCs, by big funds. Like, people are talking about BlackRock investing in Bitcoin. I mean, does any of that really matter? I mean, it's also a sign of how our culture is corrupted in general. Like, people in ancient Greece, they used to think that actors was it was a profession that was looked down upon. And now we actually, like, people like kind of worship actors, but we don't actually talk about the people who write the movies or like write the things, or we like talk about the people who play the role. And in general, like, society's dominated by like celebrities and influencers, but we don't talk about people who like engineers or doctors or like people who create value. So it's a similar thing in Bitcoin. People talk about like, there's this Winklevoss twins. They never made anything in Bitcoin, but every so often there's news articles. Winklevoss twins said this, or Winklevoss and they were just like failed Facebook investors that then made a lot of money by investing in Bitcoin. So, and then like now that's like what people do. Because there's not really any. I mean, they try to manufacture narratives every so often. So, Lightning was the big one. That hasn't worked. Lightning, failed technically, I guess. I mean, I'm not qualified to really judge in terms of Lightning. Nostr is I guess, the new one. Or social media. Now they're talking about ZKL2s on Bitcoin. So, these are all just like attempts to like pump the thing. Crypto operate in general, like very similar. Like you get these like narratives that people try and use to promote things. So
I want to go back. You mentioned many things I want to talk about, but I want to go back to Dark Wallet because it was the first wallet to have CoinJoins. It basically brought us CoinJoins and then
stealth addresses.
And stealth addresses, exactly. Which it isn't very interesting for whoever wants to learn about it, how they got crippled by a change in core about the up return size. But yeah, Dark Wallet started the way of what we nowadays know that is doing Samurai, all of these people who is trying to bring some privacy to Bitcoin. And it all started in Dark Wallet. Not a lot of people know about it.
Well, history is written by the victors. So, I was outside of crypto because I went to the war in Syria. And so, there was a new set of people that come along, and the people that were there, occupy the positions of power, and they get written into the history. So that early history is has been forgotten. So that's how people have very short-term memory, so things get forgotten.
How it came to you, the idea of doing the first CoinJoin wallet?
So the name Dark Wallet actually comes from a quote by the director of the FBI, where he said encryption technologies had the potential to create these online zones that were impenetrable by law enforcement. And he called this the going dark problem. So for us, that's exactly what we want to happen. And we have this vision that people would create markets online which were completely dark, which were completely uncensored and free. And so, we wanted to bring that capability of Bitcoin to the forefront. That Bitcoin is not just a tool that makes your credit card payments cheaper, which now we know it doesn't. Bitcoin is a tool which allows anybody anywhere in the world to send money wherever they want instantaneously, to hold and to store wealth in a way that can't be confiscated, and to protect their identity. So for us, that allows the flourishing of a new arena of human activity. And so for us, the technology enables a form of activity that didn't exist before. It was like a new unfolding in the chapter of the history of technology. And so we were like, oh, we want to like open this chapter. We want to like present this chapter with a kind of product that will elevate, that will like put on the stage that thing. Then it will become visible and people would see it. people would understand that's what this is about. So that was the idea behind Dark Wallet. That's why it was called the Dark Wallet. And so we worked on that technology, and that had a big effect on the early industry, on the software that was developed from it, and is also the forerunner to DarkFi that we're working on now.
It's interesting to see how you were creating Dark Wallet to bring those capabilities to the user, to remind people what is Bitcoin for. Then the state, as you were saying, the FBI was already mentioning these words about we have a problem, is that things are going dark and we're struggling to surveil. The FBI and all these triple letter agencies, they wanted to send a message at the time. In 2013, at the end of 2013, we have Silk Road taken down and Ross Ulbricht taken to jail. And he's still there. Hopefully that can change soon at some point. And then also at the time, Julian Assange was already 1 year in the embassy of Ecuador, London. So there was a backlash. They wanted to create this chilling effect to remind people who is in charge. And I wanted to ask how it was to be the creator of Dark Wallet. Were you pushed to stop what you were doing? Did the state present to you in any form?
I did one time have the cybercrime police try to recruit me. And I asked them, I said, "Oh, why me?" And they go, "Oh, because you know a lot about Anonymous and stuff." And I was like, I took their business card and I was like, "Oh, thank you." And I just went on my way, and I just chucked away the card, ignored it. But yeah, that was the only thing that happened really, in that time at least.
And why it ended? Why Dark Wallet finished?
Because I went to Syria, and it's a failure on my part also as a leader that I didn't formulate a good organization which could operate by itself. If you look at a lot of projects today, like tech companies, there's this founder effect. Everybody talks about, oh, you need the charismatic founder, and then everybody else is just like around them like a little slave class, implementing the will of the creator. I think that's actually bad. That's not the kind of society we're trying to create, which is a society of autonomous, activated, potentiated people. So when we actually build our own organizations, we need to foster talent. We need to foster leadership. Back then, we had a project, Dark Wallet. We didn't really ideate on these questions. So I had developers that I were working with. They were very enthused by the project. But once I kind of left the project because I went to Syria and there wasn't a replacement for that. And so they delivered the alpha version. We delivered the alpha. But after that, they just kind of stopped working on it. So that's a failure on my part, which now I recognize that. And I'm trying to resolve that with the work we're doing now.
Amir is about to start delving deep into the rabbit hole of lunarpunks and the loss of direction that Western society is currently experiencing. But first, a super brief moment for Hodl Hodl and CoinKite. Hodl Hodl's Lend is the website where you can lend and borrow from other individuals. Who is this interesting for? Well, for example, if you want to spend your Bitcoin, you might want to consider taking out a loan using them as a collateral. Spend the stablecoins you obtain and not have to pay taxes. You can take it out for up to a year and then repay it and get your Bitcoin back. Or if you have stablecoins, you can lend them out and earn up to 20% annual interest, personally verified. Do your own research and discover that Hodl Hodl is not just for buying and selling Bitcoin between individuals. It also offers Bitcoin loans on Lend. More in the description. And CoinKite, the creators of the most iconic Bitcoin hardware wallet, the Coldcard. A few days ago, I had a great time using the Coldcard Q. I truly believe it's a hardware wallet for everyone, with endless capabilities and learning potential. This past week, they released a new feature that shows how committed they are to making things easy. Now, if you have NFC enabled, once you have signed your transaction on the Coldcard, you can broadcast it to the Bitcoin network by bringing it close to a phone with NFC. The phone will receive the signed transaction and send it to make it a reality. Great, right? That's what it looks like to have a cold card. Constant updates and always at the forefront of this industry. Check them out by following the link in the description below. Now we're going to 2024. We have also a mainstream wave. We have a mass adoption idea on the table. We have, for example, the billionaire clubs. We have Michael Saylor, Elon Musk, Jack Dorsey. All of them got into Bitcoin. Some of them, Elon Musk, kind of like left. Michael Saylor and Jack Dorsey are speaking about it on a daily basis. So we have this kind of actors now. They even created the mining council to speak with authorities to show them that mining is good. It reminds a little bit about Bitcoin Foundation in a way. And we are talking, or we are hearing people, even in the privacy industry, talking about compliant privacy. We saw the case, for example, of Wasabi Wallet placing a filter in front of the CoinJoin to allow a chain analysis company to check the UTXOs that were entering the mix and to ban some of them if they were not cute. This is what is happening. Is another time trying to create actively breaches with regulators and trying to create or to farm Bitcoin in a way that is good for mass adoption. A big parallel here. What do you think about this?
So I'll talk about the negative and I'll talk about the positive. Where crypto finds itself now is the developers, they create a project and, you know, they need to fund that project. They need some capitalization, and there is a VC class that has this liquidity, that offers this money. And where they get the liquidity is that they run funds, who the funds are invested by, you know, these ultra wealthy rich people. These ultra wealthy rich people are people that are connected, embedded in the system, and they get their wealth from essentially the corruption of the financial system, of the central bank printing money, which when you print money, you know, normal people, they work for, you know, a few dollars, they work for some cash, some euros, and they get paid in that. And when the central bank prints money, they're devaluing the currency of everyone else. And now they've printed a whole new bunch of cash. And so then they give that to their buddies, to their friends. So essentially they're stealing money. They're devaluing the money that normal people earn from the labor that they give, from the value that they create. So they give this money. Where do they give it to? They give it to financial speculators. So it's theft, like on a direct scale. And they give it to these ultra wealthy guys. The ultra wealthy guys, you know, they've got this money and they're like, oh, we want to multiply the money. So we put it in these funds. And they're not even interested really in having the most amount of profit. They just like, they want to put it somewhere, unstable yield. And, you know, they're not concerned, you know, with the profit. They have other concerns, you know, like the people that print the money, that give it to them, it has conditions attached to it. They have an agenda that they have to keep to. And the people, these VCs invest that money for them. So these VCs, they're going to toe the party line. You know, it's a type of communism, basically. They call it capitalism, but it's like communism for the rich class, but it's capitalism for the poor who have to work. And then the people who create the crypto projects, they're working really hard on technology. They're putting their life and soul into it. And then they need some cash to survive. So they sell their tokens to these guys, to these VC funds. And the VC funds, they get money. The rich guys get the money off of the labor of the technologist. The technologist also gets some money, but he's just sold a portion of his labor to these guys who they didn't do anything. They did do something. They're like accumulating risk. So this VC class, you know, you go on Twitter and you see them writing, and they write these like blogs, these essays, and, you know, they pose as this like philosophers who who like see the matrix about the markets. But then you like read what they wrote 2 years ago and you read what they write now. And you're like, oh, these guys, they don't know nothing. They're completely wrong every time about what they write. They have no consistency. They just jump from one thing to another. Like now they're all talking about like AI, like, because, oh, that's the new trendy thing. So they just jump into whatever, but they write like very, you know, like fancy language, like fancy things that convinces people that they're the experts. Because that's their job, really, to convince. It's like a form of, it's like what politicians do when they talk. You know, they know it, they've been trained how to talk. You sort of like, I remember I once saw a speech by Obama, and he was saying all these things, and I was like, yeah, he's oh yeah, I agree with, yeah. But then after he finished, I was thinking, I was like, wait, what did he actually say? He didn't actually say anything. He just said things like platitudes, things that sound right, but it didn't have any content, didn't have anything concrete. So they know what to say. And these VCs, they operate on this basis. And you've also got like tied into that an entire class of influencers and key opinion leaders on Twitter. And they're like, oh yeah, you know, blah. And they're writing also this, like these VCs are doing. They're working together. And people who make new projects are like, oh, we have to pay the influencers because the community, the wider community, you know, they don't have faith in themselves. And even like a lot of people who originally they came into crypto and they were like, crypto have this potential to revolutionize finance. And the ones that believed kind of saw, they remained poor, and they saw that everybody else who was just like, you know, mining airdrops, jumping from one thing to the other, you know, selling snake oil, they were the ones getting rich. And then even the ones who believed ended up also starting to do that as well, or risk getting left behind, basically. So everybody now in crypto is like stuck in this little thing of like, you know, manufacturing narratives. The narratives are not organic. They're manufactured by these VCs who go like, you know, like they go like, oh, what's the thing? Oh, modular blockchains. Oh, yeah. And then like the community who just follow what the VCs do, jumping from, you know, on Discord or Telegram groups from one to another. And then they're like, they like try to mine the airdrops or buy the token, it pumped, then they all dump, they move on to the next thing. So like crypto's stuck in this kind of circular thing where, you know, normal people who are at the bottom of that, even people who, people who see that crypto have something valuable, who like believe in the mission, they come in and they're stuck holding the bag. Or even normal people who don't know about crypto, like, you know, old boomers who are like, oh, I heard this magic token, banana coin, oh, I'll buy that. And then, oh yeah, that's a scam. You just got scammed, grandpa, you know, like that was just to steal your money. And so that's the whole hustle of crypto, essentially what crypto has become. An industry, because it doesn't have a strong ideology, wasn't able to protect itself from that kind of infiltration, that those people have been allowed to form a clique where they hold those levers of power. And the new projects that form who want the gateway or access to those markets have to, in the same way in England, we have a royal family, and, you know, people who ostensibly go, oh, the royal family, they don't really have power. But then when you see a new prime minister elected, the first thing he has to go do is kneel before the king. And the king goes, I accept you as the prime minister. Because if the king didn't accept him, he couldn't be prime minister. So it's the similar thing. Like, you know, you have to, you simp these VCs, and the VCs then, you know, they will give you the money for your project. And then maybe they, you know, if you're not in with in the clique, you know, then they will like screw you over. They will kind of go like, oh yeah, we think you're single digits value. They will like screw you when your real value is much higher. And so that's why scam projects are getting like huge valuations. And the disparity is like extreme, where projects that are developed by real technical people that have real technical innovation or value, you know, they might get a valuation of, I don't know, I'm just putting around like 50 million. and then another scam project, or maybe not a scam, but like it's a project, it's like a big corporation, they have HR, they have like tons of useless stuff, they have like, like people writing blog posts and, like all the VCs, big name VCs, etc. And they have like valuation of a billion or like several billion. And it's like, you look and you're like, well, that's not right. This project is not, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 X times this other project. Like maybe you could argue there is some disparity in value between the projects. I would argue it's the other way around, not that way around. But even if there was, like, okay, maybe 10x, maybe, at most 2x, 5x, not 100,000x. So there's something ridiculous in the economics going on. So it's, and so then everybody else who's outside of crypto is like, oh, crypto is a scam, a casino, because they saw the promises of crypto in the beginning. And they were like, oh, okay, well, let's see what happens. And then they saw those promises were never delivered on. They're like, oh, it's a hustle. And they did see all this scam stuff. And so now there's this big moralization against crypto, where a lot of normal people, they're anti-crypto. There's big anti-crypto drive. And I'm not going to go into conspiracies, but that does serve an agenda where crypto is our exit or our means of escaping this tyranny, economic tyranny, and the chaos that we see coming. And yet this narrative only served to cement the status quo interest, not to allow people's liberation away from that. At the same time, you do have, so for example, like in the case of Syria, you will get like, a lot of activists who support Rojava or Syria, and they will kind of go like, oh, cryptocurrency is bad. But then it's like, oh, do you know that people in Syria is using cryptocurrency that allows people, technologists working to get paid, that allows activists to do their activity, that allows people in the third world, they love cryptocurrency. In Egypt, as an example, when you sell USDT, you get paid 15% on top. Not that you pay 15%. They pay you 15% for giving them USDT. Crypto is in more demand than the local currency. So the developing world, the people that is not the Western people, they love crypto. Crypto helped them a huge amount. But then, the people in the West is going, oh, crypto is bad, it's a scam, without seeing that there's this value for people who are not in the Western world, the non-Western people.
I believe that the West finds less uses to crypto and they focus more in the speculation. Yes. Meanwhile, it is people in travel who really uses because it provides a utility. Yeah, it's to receive money from abroad, to send money to abroad without, for example, Argentina. If you want to send money from Argentina abroad, you will pay double in taxes. So it makes no sense. So people is avoiding that. It gives an utility that maybe you don't feel it provides you when you're living in Spain.
Yeah. So for example, in Turkey, people is in very harsh economic pressure now, where the currency is just going down. And the only way that the government can stop that is by stopping people to exit out of the economic system. Now, to jail them. Not to physically jail them, but to economically jail them. Yeah. And the people that hurts the most is the poor people. And I mean, obviously it's a bad situation as a nation state to be in, because you're impoverishing the working class further in a situation where they're already impoverished. And that's not a class that you want to get angry or rile up. But yeah, there's the economic jail, there's the cost of transfers, there's also being locked out of the Western financial system, being able to pay for things online. people being able to make payments to each other, even sanctions, like US sanctions. And the US, they have this deal with the world where the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, which means it's like neutral, it's unpoliticized. But then America has this superpower status, and it is granted this power to print infinite money, print as much money as it wants. But US now has been abusing that power, politicizing the dollar more and more as its empire is crumbling on the fringes. I mean, they were just defeated by the Taliban in Afghanistan, which they call Afghanistan the graveyard of empires. So for sanctions, and I'm not only about the US, there's many places where, countries are landlocked, where, there's like heavy restrictions on moving money in and out, and cryptocurrency is a lifeline for them. El Salvador is also another example where they have a big expat community that needs to do, what do you call it, money transmission? Remittances, yeah, sorry. So yeah, it's very useful, people in the developing world. Also, cryptocurrency have a lot of real value for anonymous networks, people who want to transact in a way that's completely anonymous and uncensored for their self-protection. And that happens globally, even in the West as well. So where we find ourselves now, though, is at a really interesting kind of fork in the road, where increasingly we're seeing a lot of populist politicians who use the language of Occupy to get into power. I mean, you have like Trump at the Libertarian convention in US promising to free Ross Ulbricht, and he's making all these outlandish promises, and everybody is just booing him because they know that he's speaking rubbish. They don't believe anything he says. And it's the same for all of these politicians in various countries getting elected, going, oh yeah, the elites, blah, blah. They're using this language, which is a radical departure from, the neoliberal kind of Obama, Joe Biden thing, where it's very establishment, and, they do this sophistry, and they speak in a very, flowery way, which is like how a politician, a man of, is meant to speak. Whereas the populist way, it's like, it's very direct, it's a very simple way of speaking. And that's a signal of an emerging consciousness that people have about the corruption in the system. And also part of this is powered by these revelations about surveillance capitalism, about the surveillance state, and the increasing authoritarian tendencies of governments in the West as the social order is fragmenting. So in the UK, there is a massive issue, just in general, with many different extremist groups. For example, one of them is the Islamists, where, they're like, English society has lost any sense of purpose, like any, big ideal, like in the Renaissance era, we were like, oh, science and progress. And then the US, we were like, people going, oh, freedom, the American ideal, the Constitution. And then like now it's like, oh, there's nothing really, like that people don't really believe in anything. And so that they're bringing all these different people into the country. Everybody have different conflicting beliefs. You've got right-wing people, you've got Antifa people, and they're all fighting each other. And the Islamists, they're also one of them. And you're growing up in London, and you're like, oh, there's nothing spiritual about this. And then ISIS is like, oh, we're going to build a caliphate. And you're like, oh yeah, that's exciting. I'm going to go there. Like a lot of those guys from Occupy London joined ISIS. Like I knew a lot of them actually. And then they come back and the government's like, oh, we got this issue with Islamists. So we're starting a new program. This is actually something that happened. We're starting a new program where we think the problem is the economically impoverished. So we're going to give them jobs, like jobs in a supermarket. Okay, so a guy, he goes to the desert to fight for an Islamic caliphate, and he come back and go, oh, you're going to give him a job in a supermarket? That really not going to change anything. Anyway, we've got this issue, right-wing groups, all different people. And and the government doesn't know what to do. They're like, oh, things are falling. We've got like highest rate of knife crime in the Western world. We've got like skyrocketing mental disorders, steroid epidemic, like loads of stuff, like just crazy, out of control. And, like no family, no community, nothing. And so what does the government do? Like, oh, surveillance. We need to like put cameras everywhere to stop the crime. We need to like make loads of new laws. We need to like heavily restrict like what people do. We need to like breathe down people's neck. I'm not saying that's by itself incorrect response, but it's an incomplete response. And it's a lack of recognition of what is the issue, what is the core issue, which is the loss of any kind of moral, spiritual fiber or framework that used to exist in the West. And so people now recognize that that's the issue. And so one big response is the reactionary response, where people are like, oh, we need to become Christians. We need to bring back Christianity. We need to elect a strong leader who can fix these issues. So that kind of like what's happening. And that does open an opportunity where, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I remember there was this software on the internet called OpenCV, which was for image recognition. And, I downloaded this library and, it could, in like, I think 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I had like a webcam stream and I was able to, draw a box around my face, like where when you move it on the screen, you're like, there's a box and it like sees your eyes and draws a box on your nose and it like recognizes your features. And I was like, wow, this is really easy to do. Like, it's like very trivial to me. And I was like, just reading the statistic and like, and it was saying, London has the highest rate of CCTV cameras in the world. And so I was telling people, I was like, they're like tracking everyone's faces. They're putting it in databases. And people are like, you're crazy. That's a conspiracy theory. That's crazy. But then it came out with Snowden like 10 years later that, yes, that's actually what's happening. Everyone was like, whoa, they're tracking our faces. They're spies. Like, yeah. Of course they're doing it. It's like the technology is so easy to do. It's not difficult. Of course, why wouldn't they do it? There's no limitation to stop them doing it. So now people are like very aware of what's happening. And the populist politicians are so popular because the neoliberal establishment politics has lost its magic. It's like the reason why those politicians go to those schools and they learn to speak in that way is because it's like a magic spell that when they say it, they can use it to turn people into their followers, like there's like and they like cast this spell and there's like, oh, this is one of your followers now. He's like heard you speak. And so that spell has been broken, like lost its hold. And when they try and use it now, it's like effectiveness is drastically lower. So people's a lot more open to when you say about the technologies that we're creating. So for example, like, we're creating Darkfire or Monero or any of these technologies which are fully uncensored, which are fully anonymous, which are fully peer-to-peer. Nobody's running the infrastructure. Everybody's running it, and nobody can shut it down, and nobody can see who you are, and nobody can stop you doing anything that you want. And the police, the law enforcement, the government comes along and they go, these people are enabling criminals online. They're enabling pedophiles online.
This is what happened with Samurai and Tornado, basically.
For example. And now you're like, we can say to people, unironically, people won't look at us like we're crazy. You're like, they're the pedophiles. The government is involved in pedophile scandals. Why are they calling us pedophiles? They're the ones that are doing murder. They just killed 2 million people in the Middle East. They're the ones that are doing money laundering and financial corruption. They're the ones printing the money. And isn't it rich of somebody that's ultra powerful, omnipresent, to like dictate what the morality is and to kind of say to the person who is powerless, who is fighting against that injustice, to say, look, they broken this arbitrary laws. They didn't play by the rules that we set. And so the game is just so rigged, but we're not going to play by your rules. And so that's like a rich person coming to a poor person and go, oh, you stole a bag of rice from me. It's like the morality between the two people can never be the same because they're just on a completely different level. So, that's the power of the situation that we find ourselves in, where, yes, we're like a guerrilla force, but how does the guerrilla force get strong? It doesn't get strong by leveraging the levers of power, by, those who have set them up in chairs of positions of power, of responsibility. Like, I was talking about these VCs and KOLs where they get the money from the system and they're the ones that and it's kind of weird because on the one hand, people recognize that they're getting screwed, that they're like on the bottom of the food chain, and they've set it up so everybody's competing against everybody else, and everybody kind of like recognize what the game is, but then they kind of, when these guys come along, and so it's like, I give an example in cryptocurrency. It's like when you see a project and you kind of go like, oh yeah, new so-and-so coin is JP Morgan Bank is like in there, like, oh, big VCs. And then all the people that are like, oh yeah, fuck the banks. Like, I hate the system. Then they're like, oh yeah, this is going to pump. Let's get this coin. And it's like, oh, so you like, you sucker. You're like falling for their game again, like, oh, those, people which have stole the money off of you, and they're putting it in that, and they're trying to get you in there so they can exit, so they can steal from you, and you're falling for their tricks again, And so, like, at some point has to change when people recognize their power and when they go, oh yeah, we're actually stronger as a force. And the response to that, and I encourage people to go on YouTube and search for this video, which is called Lunarpunk and the Dark Side of the Cycle and it's under the Rekt, R-E-K-T. This is a collaboration video that we made, and it's basically our thesis about the future of cryptocurrency, or like how things could go. It's like it's a possibility, but it's a possibility that we see the most likely to happen. And it's basically those projects which are advocating for regulation, which are advocating for the system to work with the system, as soon as the system turns around and says you don't have legitimacy, or as soon as they lose legitimacy, people become afraid, because the only reason people go into that is because they're like, oh, big bank guy bought into the coin, or big regulators. But as soon as they become a bit cold on that, they're like, oh, no, actually, we gotta reduce it. Then people become afraid and they start to exit, and it creates a cascade of other people exiting. And so those kind of narratives are what we term fragile, which is when there's a seismic event, like there's an earthquake, and there's like a building, and the building is like built with these materials. Like when the material shakes, it shatters. It doesn't bend, it shatters, and the thing collapses to the ground. So that's like those kind of projects. Whereas the projects that recognize that the system is our enemy and the cryptocurrency is a tool of liberation, and the cryptocurrency enables and is built to enable free human activity that's uncensored, that's anonymous, that's fully peer-to-peer distributed with all those properties. As soon as they crack down on us, people look, where can I go? Because cryptocurrency is not just about scams. It's about, for example, the third world, people transacting, because they're persecuted. Let's say in an authoritarian regime, government arrest you. They go, oh, this trade you're doing is illegal. They want to put you in jail. What do you need to use a cryptocurrency system that protects your identity, that keep you anonymous. So as soon as that kind of pressure start to pile onto crypto, people go, where should we go? And they look for the freedom enhancing projects. So there's this split between, the RegFi and the DarkFi. And the more that those projects succeed, and the more impenetrable they are to attack by nation states, the more the nation states have to increase the amount of law enforcement activity, increase the amount of effort that they have to persecute those communities. And those communities draw strength and power from that, and they become stronger. That's the nature of guerrilla activity. Like your comrades, they fall and other people step up. They're like, wow, this has really gone too far. This authoritarianism, this persecution, this surveillance, this tyranny, it's just going to keep going unless we challenge it, unless we say no. And when people start doing that, when people see, like this is what happened in Syria, for example, with the civil war, where, a group of people, they rise up against the dictator, and the dictator shoot them, and another people see that and they're like, this is injustice. We can't take it anymore. We're going to rise. And they rise up, and then another group rise up. And then suddenly the dictator, he tried to respond to one, but he can't respond to all of them. And then other people see that they're not able to respond to that. And other people become brave and they start to stand up. And then soon everybody's standing up because everybody's like, oh, we're going to change things. We're going to overthrow this guy. That's how these things spread. So when that happens, when people become brave and they become afraid, then we've essentially won. And that's when they start resorting to really brutal measures, which is, kind of interesting because there were people in the 90s, like there's a book called The Sovereign Individual. It says a lot of crazy things, but in that book, they're saying that cryptography will enable this new thing called cryptocurrency, which eventually governments will resort to assassinating people, which we've seen happening in last few years, where, people that were in custody of police died mysterious deaths. Like it happened to Jay Stark. He invented the FGC-9 3D printed gun, and German police arrested him. Then he turned up dead a day later. So,
and now a moment for Minter and Bitrefill. You have to get to know Minter, the app and peer-to-peer network where you can create and share content in a decentralized and uncensorable way. You open the app, create your identity with 12 words, and start writing. Gradually, the application will connect with more individuals and download the latest articles from the network, and you will have them locally. When you publish something, this content will be broadcasted through its peer-to-peer network and stored in other peer nodes, so it's always available. It's like the Banabar Bush idea, the Memex, realized and integrated with Lightning to receive value right from the start. Download it now and experience what it's like to rewrite the web. And Bitrefill, the website where you can live on Bitcoin. Because at Bitrefill, you can buy anything with Bitcoin. Last week, for example, I visited Andorra briefly, just one day. And my phone company didn't cover roaming there. I went to Bitrefill, searched for eSIM Andorra, and bought a card that they have for 1 day with unlimited data. I added it to the card, and with just 2 clicks using Lightning, I had it installed on my phone. I spent the day in Andorra talking and having my digital needs met without worrying about a surprise in my phone bill. All thanks to Bitrefill. People is getting aware. People is realizing bit by bit. Nevertheless, we're having now people who worked in privacy tech in jail. We have Alexei in the Netherlands. We have now Roman Storm waiting for trial in the States. And now we have 2 Samurai developers waiting for trial in the States and in Portugal. And I feel that we, in the Bitcoin community, that this is where I live, I saw this chilling effect of people getting scared and running. And even Wasabi closed the coordinator. There is no more CoinJoin there. Mining companies are leaving the States because they are afraid to be called money transmitters. But I have a hope, and I see already a little reaction. For me, what is hard to see is when will this movement or when this knowledge get to a bigger audience? When the big audience will say, okay, that was too much. Because I still hear I don't need privacy because I don't have anything to hide. And I keep on hearing it constantly in my friends, in some family members. They say that I don't have a problem to comply because I don't have anything to hide. So for me, it's hard to see when that will change. But I wanted to ask you because these days that I've been listening to you, you talk a lot about anonymity, not so much about privacy. It's kind of like that you level up. Is this, you think, the way forward? Like to privacy, okay, good, but we need to move to an anonymous, full anonymous way of everything. That's why you are into DarkFi, no? Into making everything anonymous by default. Is that the way forward?
Our target is not really, people who are going, oh, I want to transact, but I want to stop like my neighbor seeing me pay for, pornography on the internet. That's not really an exciting value proposition. I think what's really interesting about cryptocurrency is the emergence of markets which are political in their nature, which is kind of like when the printing press was invented and people are like, oh, printing books that will enable unadulterated speech, and flourished these new religious ideologies, which people said was heretical, but changed everything.
Topology of society.
Yeah, everything just changed. Like a new science, etc., culture, and technology's always done that through history. Big issue I see with cryptocurrency now is, and it might sound a bit abstract, but people are creating products for individuals rather than communities. What do I mean by that? I mean, the main way that people think about cryptocurrency is they're like, oh, here's this wallet and you can buy and you can have your crypto in there and you can send it for a payment. You can receive a payment and nobody will be able to see your transaction online. Okay, whatever, that's useful, but it's not revolutionary. But where I see crypto really having impact is me and you, we can form our own DAO, our own company essentially, and we can have our own treasury, and we can bring as many people into that. We can bring hundreds of people into that, and we can manage the treasury, and no regime can come in and tell us you have to pay this tax, or nobody can see what we're doing. Everything's completely hidden and anonymous, and we're all protected, and we can do business with other DAOs on the internet. We can trade with other people. We can run our own infrastructure, and we can communicate. And now you saw with Samurai and Tornado, they have the chats, the internal chats from these projects, and they go oh, this guy said this and this guy said this, and he's responsible for running the project, and he's responsible for this because he was saying all these things. With a fully anonymous system like the chat we use in DarkFi, all the messages are unlinked. So if somebody come and said, oh, but you said that, I was like, that's not my nickname. Somebody else could use that. Anybody can use that nickname. Anybody can put their nickname like that. So I can protect myself. And that's an area of activity which is very nascent, which maybe doesn't even exist online. We haven't even seen its true form emerge, where, we want to make infrastructure online. We want to have our own alternatives to social media or to Google Documents, etc. So what's going to be our business model for these alternatives, how are we going to run them, like in a way that's censorship resistant? Some government come and say to us, like, like, for example, the Iranian guy, they come and go like, oh, you're saying stuff against Islam on your platform. You have to shut that off or we'll put you in jail. Oh, you're running this service. We saw you doing this, applying that kind of pressure, like going, oh, this guy's, who's his identity? You need to give us the identity. How are we going to run those things, those economies, that infrastructure without strong anonymity, those so-called public spaces? And people are going to go like, oh, well, we need moderation, Sure, but I don't think that giving Silicon Valley privileged US people who are not people from the third world, who do not understand the difficulties that working class people actually face, giving them the power to dictate what is right and what is wrong, what is allowed to be said and not allowed to be said, which candidates are allowed to speak or not speak, etc. So moderation should be opt-in. People should be able to choose what speech they want to hear or not hear. I can decide that for myself, I don't need like an external party governing, my infrastructure that I use on the internet. We're really limiting the space of possibility, like what we can do on the internet. The internet is an untapped power. So when we unlock that, we can allow true freedom preserving services to flourish. And it's going to happen through these anonymous technologies like ZK proofs, etc. Google's not going to make it. Silicon Valley's not going to make it. The government's not going to make it. So
I want to close with one question, because as you know, I talk constantly about Bitcoin. You were mentioning before how distorted this crypto world got about this feedback loop with VCs and so on. And this is why I am into Bitcoin, because I feel that at least in Bitcoin values, there is a low time preference. There is like some core values, and that you have to build tools that provide some utility. Otherwise, you are not going to earn anything. And that's what you get in Bitcoin, because basically you cannot create any VC cannot profit from a new token there, no? But of course, we know Bitcoin is not anonymous. It has privacy. It can be pseudonymous if you know how to use it. But as we see, the state is blocking a lot of tools, and it's becoming harder and harder. And I want to ask you, how do you see Bitcoin doing in the future?
I mean, it is plausible that in Bitcoin, there is some kind of like realization and pivot, and Bitcoin suddenly like reassert its whole like line, becoming technologically innovative. But at this point, I think, I see cryptocurrencies just like the early web, where, there was a time AOL was like number one, and everybody was like, AOL, it's forever. It's going to remain up there forever. But I think nothing's forever. And same thing with operating systems. Eventually, there's going to be new standards. There's going to be new projects, new technologies. If I didn't think that, I wouldn't be working on DarkFi. I'd be working on Bitcoin. But Bitcoin, the cryptography has evolved massively, like the things that are possible. And it is true now that people are trying to make Bitcoin L2s. So that could be interesting if the technologies could be created on Bitcoin as L2s. But yeah, it's very difficult for new technologies to be adopted in Bitcoin. So for example, like Bitcoin could be fully anonymous, but why isn't it? Why isn't that change adopted into Bitcoin? It could literally just be very easy, small change to adopt into Bitcoin. But it will never be. It will never be adopted. In fact, some people say that it's good that Bitcoin's transparent.
Kind of like in the ethos of like the something that doesn't change, and even it's not a bug, it's a feature. This is how it's said, no? It's like you know what to expect, and you know how it will be tomorrow, and that it's hard to change. It's very hard to change. Amir, it was a pleasure to talk with you and to get to know a little bit more about you. I'll put all the links below. Also, I will put the links of this lunarpunk, which, by the way, I saw it yesterday, and yeah, it's something that people should watch, and a very good video with very good graphics. And I will put all the links about DarkFi so that people can get to read it and get involved. Thank you for these amazing minutes that you gave me, and it was really nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Luna.
And that's it for the podcast, which, as I said, you can also listen in Spanish thanks to artificial intelligence. If you have enjoyed this podcast, I also strongly recommend watching the original video from the release of Dark Wallet, which you can find on my blog, and also the one about lunarpunks that Amir made for DarkFi. It's 9 minutes, but worth every second. Ideally, watch it on your TV at night when you have nothing else to do, and you will see that the atmosphere will catch you. With these recommendations on the table, one last one for La Dobla Bullion, the place where you can stack physical hard money to place next to your satoshis. Coins and bars of gold and silver, like the recently released Imperial Eagle from the Spanish Mint. If you haven't seen the design that follows the lynx, the bull, and the Carthusian horse, it's a good opportunity to kill two birds with one stone and check it out on La Dobla's website, where you will also find pandas, philharmonics, libertades, now in pre-sale for 2024 edition, Krugerrands, Britannias, and a myriad of other coins, both in gold and silver. And that's all for today. I have just arrived in Barcelona to spend a few days in the land where I was born, to tackle also the last month of the podcast before the holidays, and to produce some exclusive content for Patreon. Next week, I'll be back with a pod that will merge past and present with a very current topic that always hovers around the Bitcoin scene. So, if nothing goes wrong, I'll see you in a week.